Well, very good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us here on the JoyNews channel. So Ghana's economy is in a crisis. Well, today we have inflation at 37.2%. Fuel prices 17.99 per litre for petrol and 23.49 for diesel. You have complained because for many of you, whenever you go to the market, you have to pay more for products. You've asked yourself, what could be happening to an economy that had so much promise in the past? We have trumpeted the 2017 to 2019 state of the Ghanaian economy, and I've said COVID-19 dealt us a big blow. Well, for many, we're on a path to recovery. And then Russia, Ukraine. But what do we do in the midst of all these challenges? This month, we have a major activity in front of all of us. As we prepare for the presentation of the 2023 budget, the government of Ghana has been engaging the International Monetary Fund, the IMF for short. Yes, in the past we said we were too proud to go to the IMF. We're a sovereign nation and we're not willing to subject ourselves to an IMF program. I am sure events of the year have compelled us to go to the IMF. But even as we get ready to get onto an IMF program, we look forward to the 2023 budget and ask that simple question, Ghana's ailing economy, the 2023 budget to the rescue. What are the expectations of industry players when it comes to the 2023 budget? What should be put in that budget that can transform an economy that is in crisis? That is our conversation this evening on the JoyNews channel. We're also live on Joy 99.7 FM. And this evening, we're joined by Professor Peter Quartey, who is Director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Dr. Priscilla Chumesiba, for Senior Lecturer at the Department of Economics. Dr. Humphrey Ayim-Dake is President of the Association of Ghana Industries. Joseph Obing is President of the Ghana Traders Union Association, both of whom are currently here with me. We'll also be joined by Mark Bedu-Abuaji, who is CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Kuku Adams is CEO of Clay Group, and Yao Apialate is partner of Deloitte Ghana. I'm doing this with Benjamin Akakpo, who is in Studio 997, and we'll be doing this together. As always, you can be part of the conversation. Join us on Twitter. Later on the show, we're told we'll be activating the phone line, so you could also tell us what your expectations are for the 2023 budget. And is it that one document that could come to Ghana's rescue? My name is Winston Amoah, and thank you once again for joining us this evening. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll begin deliberations in studio with Joseph Obing, who's President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, and Humphrey Ayim-Dake, who's President of the Association of Ghana Industries. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. When I started, I talked about how I'll be doing this with my colleague Benjamin Akakpo, who is in Studio 997. We'll go to Benjamin Akakpo now, and he'll be introducing his guest.
Well, thank you very much, Winston. Of course, we're here in Studio 997. And very quickly, we have joining the conversation. Thank you very much, Winston. Of course, we're here in Studio 9. Much for joining us tonight. We also have joining the conversation CEO of the Clay Group, and when we talk private sector work, we also have joining the conversation CEO of the Clay Group, and when we talk private sector work, we also have joining the conversation in the Joy News studio. In the Joy News studio.
Right, thank you very much, Benjamin Akakpo. So let's get into the conversation. Now in studio here with me is Dr. Humphrey Ayim-Dake, who's President of the Association of Ghana Industries, and Dr. Joseph Obing, who is the President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association. So let me start off with you. Humphrey Ayim-Dake, you're an industry player. You've seen the current situation that the country is going through. What are your expectations of the 2023 budget as industry?
All right, thank you, Winston, and thank you, Mr. Akakpo and the entire team for the evening. Viewers, good evening. Well, our expectation for the 2023 budget, one will be looking out for the trade figures or the trade performance within the figures. When we say the trade performance, we're looking out for the export-oriented position of the country, what is fueling the export. We know we have our traditional exportable goods, cocoa, gold, and oil. What is the state of the non-traditional export products? We come from this perspective because in a time like this, the drive and the current speech of the president seeks to deepen the relationship of an export-led economy. So in this particular 2023 budget, our outlook is what are the trade performers, what is happening in the export space. Then you go to the import space. What is happening in the import space? What are the main products that are coming in? What are the data that you can gather out of that said import? And then through innovative means, you could disintegrate the data and also use the data out of the said import list to develop your what we call the light manufacturing industries and import substitution. So the essence is that as much as that two set of data will give you a global picture, and that will identify your balance of payment position by virtue of your total trade, your total import, then your balance, and then from there it moves on to your exchange rate related matters, because the relationship between the two set of trades determine the extent of your exchange rate in terms of balance of payment related matters. We will beyond that also look out for the stability of the exchange rate. What are the measures that the Bank of Ghana through the Ministry of Finance together are proposing for the stability of the exchange rate? We know there is currently a short-term measure that was tabled by the president, that we all have the list. Beyond that, what are the medium-term strategies? That is why I insist on the trade figure, so that we see what can we do about export, because that is one of the solutions.
And talking about what we can do about exports, we have seen what the government has done in the past. Came to power on the promise of moving the country or the economy from taxation to production.
Yeah.
What has been the action of government over the past 6 years, and what would you want to see change in this year's and next year's budget?
Well, so from this structure I was trying to just outline, from there you could see that you move into what are the initiatives or interventions that will help the export base, that will reduce your import, that will balance your exchange rate. What are the monetary policy interventions that are happening from the BOG that are driving the macro, or currently we have a macro weakness of the economy? What are the interventions? That is why I'm giving a strategic structure that it will eat into, and then finally, the interventions that you ask the question, what are governments doing to encourage export? Before you encourage export, you need to build your capacity locally. You need to make sure that you have what we call the one district, one factories intervention was aimed at building capacity and then drive export. But the next question is, were there policies that were consistent that would give a promoter of a business the right ambience to build and expand its capacity, and then instead of doing importation, veer into export? So you watch that I'm strategically designing the engagement. So finally, you end up at interventions. We have listed a number of interventions to government. One is we've mentioned about the tax structure of our economy, i.e. the VAT structure, and the straight levy in that structure. We believe we've aired our opinion on it that it's not the best. We believe a reform could do. Other related policy that myself and a friend contended on was the benchmark discount value. We all know the ramification ever since then till date. And in one of the budget statements, government indicated the intention to reverse it. But it's not only reversing that issue. We've asked for zero-rated import duty on raw materials and selected products to complement and rejuvenate the productive base.
Okay.
Those are the interventions and many more that we expect.
We'll come back to them. I mean, we'll come back to all these interventions that you've talked about. We'll get into the specifics.
Okay.
We'll get into the macro. We'll get into the policy rate and everything. But let me get to you, Joseph Obing also, and find out your own expectations. Yes, I mean, he's been speaking from an AGI perspective, from a Guta perspective. What are your expectations?
Yeah, the main issue of this year's budget should center on exchange rate inflation, interest rate, high cost of doing business, increase in benchmark values, the structure of the VAT, as my brother said, and then escalating prices in the market. That's all. These are the things that Ghanaians are talking about, and these are the things that need to be solved.
What about benchmark values?
Yeah, I'll come to that.
Come to that.
The benchmark values, as my brother have been always trying to lobby government to remove, to boost industrialization. It's true. There's nothing that we can do better apart from industrializing to shore up our forests. And that's the surest way to go. So we do support. But the truth of the matter is that the benchmark, as he has been talking about, have been removed, unannounced. We don't have any benchmark again. And the values of benchmarks have increased about 60%.
How?
Yes, prices of goods, doing business have gone up, exchange rates have gone up. It have made importation rather very expensive.
Government, I mean, hold on. When you complained the last time, government told you it was going to stagger that. And so it was going to reduce it to 30% for general goods and 10% for vehicles. Yeah. What has changed about that?
So you want to take it off the table.
Yes.
So you increase the values over 60%.
Which values are we talking about?
The benchmark values. You see, when we import goods,
yes,
we are supposed to use the transactional value for our valuation purposes. That's the main method of valuation. Now, if Customs says or GRA says that we are giving you benchmark values, all that they are saying is that they are manufacturers, they know the prices. So they have their own set of prices, and they use it to benchmark the pricing. And so when they brought these benchmark values to cross-check our valuation system, it became what they use as the main transactional values. And that's why we agitated that these benchmark values were making it practically impossible for us to clear our goods. The duties have gone up so much. And so they came out. They didn't dash at anything. They came out to reduce the benchmark values that have been set by Ghana Revenue Authority. And they reverse it, they reduce it by 50%. And now, as I'm speaking, the same benchmark value that we agitated, that the price were high and all that have been increased to 60%. So they've taken it out, regardless of the 30%, 10% is needless. I hope you understand. So, excuse me.
Hold on, yes, shortly, yes.
When we have been able to do all these things, because we want to protect local industries, import has become relatively difficult to do and very discouraging. And so we have to look from within and patronize the goods that my brothers are making, and we are not having it. That's a very unfortunate thing, that if we want to diversify our economy and to make sure that we industrialize and all that, we also have to look at those that we have the self-sufficiency, those that we have efficiency in production, those that we have comparative advantage. It's not that we say that we want to industrialize and then we manufacture everything. It's not possible.
Can we focus on the question? So
no, the question is what I'm answering. So what I'm saying is that we have to look at all these things, cost of doing business, high prices of goods in the market and all that, because importation have become high, and then government have extorsively increased the valuation system, the benchmark values and all that. These are the things that for us, we want government to look again. The structure of the VAT is not conducive for trading.
Okay.
And it's not helping.
Okay.
Just a quick one. Just a correction.
Yes.
Let the public know that Mr. Bean is misinforming the citizenry that the benchmark discount value has been fully reversed. Government indicated that they will do this in 2 stages.
Yes.
Records indicate government did the first one, and in the said budget of 2022, government said by this 2023 budget, they will do full reversal. If cost of clearing goods are high, you should go trace what are the costs. Today, we all appreciate that the dollar to CD exchange rate has changed. That is the trigger of why cost of clearing is high. It is not the reversal of benchmark discount value. The second phase has not been executed. I recall in 2019, when this discussion started, myself and Opin, then we have what we call the common external tariff that had triggered in because we had signed before the MPP power, government took power. So by then, those were the fundamentals that caused the cost of clearing goods at the port. Obin refused to appreciate the dynamics. There are economic metrics, Mr. Obin. What you are doing, you
okay, hold on, guys. Hold on.
Benchmark discount value has not yet been
reversed. Hold on, guys.
Stop misinforming.
It has been increased to 60%.
Hold on.
Means that if they use even 30%, it means nothing to us.
Dr. Obing.
That's what we are saying.
Joseph Obing, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
I am moderating this. Yeah, thank you very much. And I have made the point very clear, and I put the question to you because that is the stage that we've reached. 30%, 10%, but you know that today, because of a depreciating Ghana cedi, a lot of things have changed. And you've complained about that before. As Guta, and even when you shut down your stores, you complained about that. You met with government. Government said they were going to look at a fixed rate for you over the period, and you said that was a good point. So you can understand where that challenge is coming from. Let's get on to Zoom, because we're joined by Professor Peter Quartey. Professor Peter Quartey, who is the Director of the Institute of Statistical, Social, and Economic Research. Your microphones are on. Your microphones are on. Prof, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. So we're all waiting for the 2023 budget. We've asked that simple question: is it the one most important document that can transform an ailing economy? What form should it take in 2023? What should be the major programs and policies in the 2023 budget to transform our current situation?
Well, good evening, Winston, and good evening to fellow panel members. Good evening to your discerning viewers and listeners. It is always a joy to discuss the economy of Ghana, and I'm very excited despite the challenges we are going through. As a budget cannot address all our problems. Normally, we have a development plan, we have a medium-term plan, and then a budget. So the budget statement would execute what is in our medium-term strategy. So 1 year, 2023 budget alone will not address all our problems. It will to some extent, but we need a medium to long-term plan or strategy. In this 2023 budget, I would expect to see what are the measures we are putting in place to address our fiscal challenges. Revenue mobilization has been very, very slow. We saw the poor performance of e-levy, our anchor, prior to going to the IMF. We've seen that other tax handles are not yielding the needed revenue. So I would want to see new and innovative measures to be introduced in the 2023 budget that will shore up our revenue mobilization strategy. We've seen GRA doing its best, but I think we need to go a step further. Then when it comes to the fiscal, we've heard news about government reducing its spending in terms of
yes, but just before you go on, it's important I clarify a few issues before you move on. You've talked about new and innovative measures by the GRA. What are these new and innovative measures that you're expecting from the GRA?
Well, I think they have started. I mean, moving from the paperwork to digitalization, where you can file your tax, you can pay your tax online. We've seen GRA moving to certain areas where some people are not paying the right taxes. They have stationed workers there to ensure that the right amount of taxes are paid. They are enforcing the tax law where some shops were closed and so on and so on. We want to see more of that, and I think it's a step in the right direction. We need to enforce that and raise our revenue stream. So those are some of the innovative measures I would want to see, that we aggressively pursue our revenue mobilization measures without destroying the base, that is industry, without affecting industry. Let's do it within the legal remits or the remits of the law. I was also going to talk about expenditure. The government said it's going to pursue an austere budget, is going to reduce its spending. public sector workers were going to, or government appointees were going to suffer a 30% cut in salaries. I expect a step further. I think even a reduction in the number of government appointees and how much is spent on them and many other areas would go a long way to help streamline our revenue base and also a fiscal position. The monetary sector is facing significant challenges. We've seen the exchange rate performing very badly, the worst sometimes in the continent. And I think I would want to see measures to shore up the exchange rate. So once the exchange rate is stable, once we see traders, importers, manufacturers see a stable exchange rate regime, we are certainly able to plan, they are certainly able to produce at reasonable cost. But that feeds depreciation, the exchange rate depreciation feeds into the inflation rate we are experiencing. So if we address that in the 2023 budget, that will be excellent. The other area I want to see is the IMF program. So far, we've heard about pieces of information. We've heard pieces of information about the program itself, the key 7 pillars, but the details are not spelled out for us to know. We want to know, for instance, is there going to be debt restructuring, which is inevitable? What form will this come? What measures are we going to put in place to ensure that our debt becomes sustainable in order to engage with the IMF meaningfully? I expect more from the program, the IMF program, and how through the program we are going to grow our economy, reduce poverty, etc. But I must say that just the 2023 budget alone will not take away all our challenges. There are inherent systemic problems that we need to solve. We have the political business cycle where every election year we spend like there's no tomorrow, and then after the elections we try to clean the mess. We've seen these days we talk about Russia-Ukraine war as one of the causes. We talk about COVID-19, but nobody talks about elections. Look at how much we spend capital expenditure from 2017, 2018 up to 2021. You will see that between 2020 and 2021, capital expenditure was somewhere around 15% of total expenditure. That is huge post-COVID, immediately after COVID. Okay. It tells you that we spend so much on elections and we create a mess. And this also accounts for the challenges we are currently facing. So I expect more from the budget, but I think these are some of the key areas I expect the budget to focus on.
Okay, I'll get back to you particularly on the debt restructuring bit and the form. You say it's inevitable, but what really matters is the form it should take. We'll find out what form you would want it to take. We also joined on Zoom by Dr. Priscilla Chumesi-Bafo, who is senior lecturer at the Department of Economics of the University of Ghana, and Yao Apialate, who is partner at Deloitte Ghana. Thank you very much, Yao, and thank you very much, Dr. Chumesi-Bafo, for joining us. And let me start off with you, Dr. Chumesi-Bafo, if you can hear me. So in the 2022 budget, we talked about, focusing more on fiscal consolidation. Would you say we succeeded in doing that or we failed?
Thank you, Winston, and good evening to your listeners and fellow panelists. I believe that to a large extent, given the state that we are in right now, it means that the fiscal consolidation measures in the 2022 budget was not convincing, particularly to foreign investors. Why do I say that? We see that at the beginning of 2022, we started having issues with price stability, inflation started rising. We also saw quite clearly that in terms of government budgets, the revenues were not coming in as had been planned. And so the market was not convinced that the cuts in expenditures that had been rolled out by government were feasible, and for that matter, would be able to make the government solvent, particularly in terms of meeting its debt obligations, i.e. servicing of debt that is paying interest payments and amortizations as well. So to the extent that we are at this point, it means that the austerity measures were not convincing. And that has culminated into basically Ghana losing access to the international capital market. And we know that the implication of that has been the current challenges we are in, particularly on the forex fronts, given that now the avenues that we had, i.e. the use of euro bonds to be able to shore up the forex, is no longer available. So it's sort of all the issues are bottling up, and then given the rising cost of fuel, it is all also feeding into inflation. So it's more like a cycle that is going on. So for me, I think that government needs to be innovative to show that it is really serious about austerity measures. And given that we are also on the verge of an IMF program, I believe that this is the opportunity for managers of the economy to prove that indeed they are quite serious about cutting down on expenditure and also about measures in terms of raising enough revenue. Professor Kote has outlined a number of the revenue measures, but I believe that, for example, I will not be surprised to see that they reinstall road tolls. Because first of all, the removal was quite something that was surprising. If we are talking about public-private partnership in terms of investments in the roads and infrastructure, then tolls are still quite relevant. What we need to do probably, if it's causing some distortions, is to try to digitize the whole scenario, use electronic passes, create the necessary avenue so that we can generate the revenue. There are other handles that are also existing. So, for example, the president hinted about property taxes. We know that it is something that we have discussed over and over, but I believe that the challenge was the fact that property tax collection was ceded to district assemblies. So now I know that it is being brought into the consolidated scenario where the central government would be the ones in charge of the collection. Evidence has shown that a bit of
just before you go on, you've talked about, you've talked about, you know, the measures, the measure that we put in place in 2022, which didn't really work. Now, we've had the president, when he addressed the nation, talking about similar measures for in the near future. He's talked about a 30% salary cut, you know, and 30% expenditure cut. Do I get the impression that if it didn't work in the past, what's the proof it's going to work in the future?
So in this budget, I think that the evidence should be more, and indeed cutting down 20% expenditure on public appointees and all that. It is an indicator of the austerity measures that government is taking, but it is not enough. And we know that as the country prepares to go under an IMF program, the fund will make certain demands in terms of cutting profligate expenditures, for example. So when you look at, for example, government big budget items, I suspect that some of them government would have to probably trade in one or two, but the fund is also quite careful in order not to cause a lot of hardship on the ordinary Ghanaian, i.e. the poor in the society. So they are sensitive about that. But indeed, with this budget, government would have to show and prove that, because at this point, we do not have the option. We need the funds. We need the fund to come in to support. So government ought to show that it is doing this revenue mobilization, it is ramping it up, and then the expenditure bit, it is within the remit of government. With the expenditure, that is what you have absolute control of, because you know that, I mean, you are spending on X, Y, and Z. I can understand that in terms of interest payments and payments of what we call wages and salaries, government is quite tight. So if that is the situation, then other expenditures would also have to be tightly controlled. And when you talk about expenditure rationalization, we are also talking about efficiency in the expenditure as well, because given that we do not have, for every cedi that is efficiently spent, it means that it will be good value to the people of Ghana rather than spending on other things that are not necessarily important. So at this point, it is more about bread and butter issues for government, keeping essential expenditure and taking out all the others that are not necessary. So I will be very surprised if I should see a rollout of big capital expenditure items in this 2023 budget, because that is not something that would be feasible.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Chumesi Bafo. We'll get back to you shortly. Let's still stay on Zoom, where Yalate, who is partner Deloitte Ghana, is also joined us. So, yeah, what are your own expectations of the 2023 budget?
Good evening, Winston, and thank you for the opportunity. I think my expectations, some of which have already been mentioned by the panelists, covers the 4 areas that have always been identified as the problem or the challenges that we've had post-COVID. And I'll mention the 4. The first one is slowdown in fiscal consolidation. Over the last 5 years, our budget deficit has not been reducing, it's been widening. That should have been the reverse. So we have to reverse the trend. It should be around 5% per the act that we passed, which has been suspended during the COVID period. But if we are not around 5, we should be aiming towards the 5%. We've gone over above 10%. And so we have to start working towards fiscal consolidation, reducing the budget deficit. And that's the function of the second point that I'm coming to, which is a low revenue. But the person mentioned resources. I think that the government has that, and we have a lot of which is fantastic, as we always mentioned. Now, our government is also a fact that the issue now.
So, yeah, we'll get back to you. We're having a bit of challenge with your sound. Yalate, who is partner of Deloitte Ghana. We'll get back to you. But let's now cross over to Studio 997, where Benjamin Akakpo is. He's joined in that studio by Mark Bedu-Abuaji, who is CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Kuku Adams, who is CEO of Clay Group. If you can hear me, Benjamin Akakpo, over to you.
The good analysis that has been done so far. Let's connect from our studios here. Of course, we have Mark Bedu-Abuaji, CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, together with Kuku Adams, CEO of the Clay Group. Once more, thank you for staying here patiently.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll start with you, Mark. So looking at the 2022 budget, there were a lot of projections, allocations, revenue versus expenditure. How has that, do you feel, impacted businesses? Has it been positive? Has it been negative based on what the projections were from the 2022 budget?
Well, it's been negative. I think that probably is the worst budget performance for the past 30 years. Why am I saying so? Let's compare the budgeted figures to the actual figures as at September, because that is where the figures are available. If you look at all the macroeconomic indicators, it's obvious that you are not going to achieve even one of the targets, even the revised ones. For inflation, for instance, we targeted 8 plus or minus 2.
Under 10%.
Under 10%. And the revised one was 28.5. As at now, it's 37.2. And the likelihood that it will go up again is there, looking at the pass-through effect of all the things that are happening in terms of increases in fuel prices and also lorry fares and other things. So obviously, we are not going to achieve that. If you look at the policy rate also, for instance, it was 14.5% at the beginning of the year. At the moment, it's 24.5%. And what that means is that interest rate will definitely go up. And we've seen the reference rate at the last October figure at 30.52. And that is just the basic or the basis for which they set interest rate. So interest rate for now is around 35 to 40%. Now, if you look at even government gross, the National Reserve, which they predicted for 4 months, as at September, it's about 2.7 months. The fuel prices and all those things put together, it's obvious that there is no way we are going to achieve that target. So I think it's a total failure in terms of the performance of the budget. And the variances are so huge. In instances where you have minimal variance, then you can adjust. Because businesses use these figures, the budgeted figures, to predict. And every business needs some level of predictability. So all the budgets that we did based on these figures have all been thrown out of gear. And businesses will have to now always review their budget to conform to the changes that we are having. Now, the question was, what is the impact of this on businesses? All these variables fit into the cost of production. So you have interest rate going up, and as a business person, you are going to borrow at 35%. You have fuel prices going up, you have inflation going up, and all these things are increasing the cost of production. On the flip side of it, it's also the revenues that are coming in. People are not being able to buy the product because prices are high. So what people are now doing is to ensure that at least they put body and soul together. So things that ordinarily they would have purchased, now they cannot purchase. So those who are into those sectors are finding difficult also to raise revenue. The combined effect is that your profit is gone. So either you are running at a loss, or at least you are breaking even. And for businesses, you need to make profit to create value for your investors.
There's no Father Christmas out there.
No.
But does that, just staying on that point, does it also explain why? Look, typical example, before I traveled to Togo just about 2 weeks ago, I went and asked about the price of a product. Yeah. I was told it was 416 cedis. I came back, it wasn't new stock, but now they were quoting over 800 cedis for the same product. Is that also justified, coming from where you sit?
Yes, the question is, if the person wants to restock, will the person get it at the price that you ask? If it's 8 cedis, and now the supplier is giving it to me at 12 cedis, if I give it to you at 8 cedis, it means that if I want to go and buy again, I won't get it at 8 cedis, I need the 12 cedis. So definitely, it's not like businesses are making abnormal profit. To be frank with you, most of them are just selling at a price that is just enough for them to sustain themselves. So, and sometimes it's so difficult to transfer 100% of the increment to consumers. It depends on the kind of consumers you have. It depends on the elasticity of the product that you are selling, and depends on the market that you are also operating in. So the assumption is that whenever there is an increase in inflation and all those things, there is a 100% transfer of this cost into consumers. It's not realistic. So sometimes you also have to understand how these businesses are working. Now, if you have, for instance, at the beginning of the year, if you are doing a trade that probably will cost you about, let's say, $10,000, the CD equivalent probably will be about $6,000. Now you need more of the dollars to be able to, and the capital of a lot of businesses have been depleted. Now they need to go in for more loans. The loans are also at a very expensive rate. So you don't have the capital, you're going to the bank, and the bank is charging you at 35%. How do you expect businesses to survive? All right. So it's a very difficult situation that we are in now.
Talking about that difficulty, and quickly on this point so I can come to Kukwa, how then would you categorize the 2022 budget? Has it failed? And even before that, you remember that when the president spoke to us in that address on the economy, he also made mention of the fact that businesses must try to trim down on their margins. He used, these words that he hesitates to call you names, traders, basically. How then do you react to that? These two, very quickly.
Well, I think subsequently there have been a lot of engagement with businesses, and you followed the discussion. You realize that you realize that is not totally the truth. Businesses, and there was instances where they interviewed one of our members, and he gave a clear indication that this thing that I'm selling, I bought it last week at 100 cedis. The next day, the supplier called me and told me that it's 12 cedis. So if you go there and you realize that it's not the 10 cedis that he's selling, you may think that he wants to make excess profit. That is why he has increased it to 12 cedis. So let's also go back and check the suppliers. How are their prices that they are giving it to the consumer. So there may be some little of truth, but I think that is not totally truth. Businesses are really suffering, and we need to look at that.
Let me bring in Kukwa. Before I even talk about small business, which is where you find yourself, how would you assess, based on the impact, what you've seen economically of the 2022 budget? What would be your reflection on it?
So for some of us, like you rightly said, from the SME industry, to be very honest, I think that all our expectations based on what was read out haven't been met. Okay. And if I just want to quote Professor Peter Korte, right. He mentioned some of his expectations on revenue mobilization by GRA. But when you also listen to, I mean, let's just take us back to 2022 budgets. You do realize that the Minister of Finance mentioned that 90% of total tax revenue is from the Greater Accra region. Mm. This also goes to show that then the other regions, what is really happening. Mm.
So widening the tax net.
Obviously. So these are some of the, I mean, everybody on this panel has, shared their, their concerns and their expectations. But if you are looking at the budgets and you can actually see that just revenue mobilization is from a certain sector or a certain region, then it just goes to show that there's a lot of, challenges that we are also looking out to the government to also help us solve.
It's interesting that you put it in that, conversation, because yes, it would often be told that when you look at the sub-region, maybe in terms of the payment ratios, we are not reaching the targets that we need. But over the last few years, you would also realize that the GRA, per its own targets, it has been even overshooting those targets. That is the interesting bit. So if we broadened it further to reach all those other sectors, what could it yield? But tell me then, when it comes to small business, which is where you find yourself smack down your alley, how have you been impacted this year?
So, to be very honest, it's been a never-ending nightmare.
Nightmare?
I'm telling you. Because sales have plummeted. Some businesses have had to shut down. Now, those businesses that have been shut down are also struggling with even finding new customers. Some of us have had to go to the extent of introducing pay cuts, going to the extent of bringing a 3-day work week. You realize that it's not working. Some, then we have to also think of, okay, maybe this is the time for us to actually move into working, from home full time. Because what's happening is that employee salaries are now becoming transportation allowance. And if you're a business owner, you may not be able to afford an increase in their salary in these times. Then we also have, now the beautiful thing about what we do, in our industry is that we can easily implement, some of these changes quickly, but it's still very challenging. I can give you an example. Businesses that have a lot of inventory, for example. Now we're advising that they do product bundling so they can, sell them off. And these times are not even a time for making profit. It's a time to, just stay afloat, more like just trying to survive.
Just break even.
At this point, you have to. And then we also have those that have very limited stock, very limited stock. And some people are being forced to create, how we call those artificial shortages, just so that they can also come back, at least buy time, review your prices and come back. And this is hurting all of us one way or the other.
So interesting. Definitely the impact has been great on you, but you've been mentoring startups. What have been their concerns about the economy? What have they been sharing with you?
Well, interestingly, startups are also going through it. Now, investors are asking for more equity because access to funding is becoming a challenge. Yeah. So the people who have can easily, convince you to give out more. So currently it's more of take it or leave it basis. Now, those that have funding, you'll be amazed, are struggling with finding the right team. Now, we all know that unemployment is, the rate has gone high and all of that. But there's a genuine, challenge where these businesses, the startups, for example, are struggling with finding the right people. Now, what's happening is that those that are available to work are not ready to risk working with a startup. Those that
they don't want to take that risk.
No, you can't, because what's going to happen if you start working for a fairly new business and in 3 months the business shuts down? The risk is too high. And then those in the market that are also looking for the jobs are actually not the right people to work with, because most people are also looking at they're also looking at, you know, just finding something in the interim, and then once, you know, they are comfortable and they find another job, they're going to leave. And you can't start a business, you know, with people that are not looking to grow with you. And then of course we have those that are feeling at this point they should have waited before starting their businesses, because at the beginning of the year, of course, we all had very high expectations, and who would have thought that you and I today will actually be, you know, in a position where we're beginning to blame our fuel gauge, because there are instances where you get to the fuel station and you ask yourself, you think,
I think the Member of Parliament for Adansi Asokwa, Katie Hammond, made mention, I hope I got the constituency right, made mention of the fact that he nearly fought with a fuel attendant, even he in his position. And just to break it down, when you look at the fuel increments or the prices, in 2018, we saw an increment of 10%, 2019, 10%, 2020, we saw 15%, 2021, 13%. In this year alone, 54%. Yeah. And that doesn't even include, you know, 19% was recently agreed with government. On the back of that, they have added another 20%. So they did 20% instead of 19. Now they've added 20%. And recently when I spoke to the PRO of the GPRTU, he said that they have an automatic adjustment system now, because the prices fluctuate in a day. And you probably have to do something about it. But let me come back to Mark very quickly. I'll return to you, Kukwa. If the budget has failed, like you paint that picture, did government then underestimate COVID-19 and its shocks to the point where when the Russo-Ukrainian war came, it just created a meltdown?
Well, I think since 1983, we've not had a major shock to our economy. And after that, we've not taken the pain to look at how resilient our economy is. An economy, if you want to know how resilient an economy is, you have to look at the manufacturing sector of that economy. An economy with a very weak manufacturing sector is not deemed to be resilient. So any shock will actually impact negatively on the economy. And I think that is why we've been talking about changing the structure of the economy. And we've said this over and over again. And look,
but we have 1D, 1F.
I'm coming. Look at all the development plans that we have had. The main ones, the Kwame Nkrumah's 7-year development plan, there's a clear structure on how we can change the structure to an export-led. And that's why he started with the import substitution industries. For now, look at that and where the factories are. The 1D, 1F, I think, is the closest to also changing the structure. But what has been the performance of the 1D, 1F?
That's the question.
I mean, it's not to say that we are setting up an industry in every district. It's for us to now do a proper value chain and understand where it will be profitable and ideal to set up an industry. The reason why most of the industries are failing now and we are not able to export as expected is that as a country, we've only paid lip service to changing the structure of the economy. And we've also not done proper value chain analysis. If you look at all the factories that we set up, go to Palugu, we had a tomato factory, and then we have a meat factory. All these factories are not working. And the reason is simply because probably they don't have raw materials or we don't know where the off-takers are.
I mean, there's a typical example that we have now. Commander.
The Commander
is right in front of us.
Yes. So when we do that, so what we should have done actually is to look at those that are already exporting and those that have potential to export and support them. I've said that if we can identify 10 to 20 businesses or manufacturing companies that are doing well and support them, within 10 years, we'll be having 200 big manufacturing companies in Ghana. And that would have covered the district that we are talking about. It's not just setting up because the raw materials probably may not be there. You set up a factory. The next day, they are producing and don't have raw material, and the factory will have to be shut down.
Okay.
So let's look at the structure of the economy. And I think that the COVID was big. It disrupted everything. And not only in Ghana, in other countries as well. So now we need to do proper resilience and look at how we can move forward with our economy.
Before we take a break, I want to bring in Kukwa because we'll have time later to also talk about the 2023 budget and what we anticipate. But we import over 10.8 billion in terms of other items. Now our exports have also shrunk by about 0.9%. I'm talking crude, I'm talking cocoa, I'm talking gold. When you look at that point that he makes, 1D, 1F. Today I spoke to government's spokesperson on governance and security, and he said that we had 200 of these factories on the ground. Have you seen the impact? What else can we do in that regard?
So for me, it's as Mark was saying, it's more about systems and structures. Okay. Now, assuming that we set these business up, we have the right systems, we have the right structures. I mean, we're monitoring properly. They are also able to give feedback. Chances are they will be able to scale up, or they can be able to, take the shocks that we are all, absorbing currently. So, I mean, with the wrong system, it looks like it was, set up and then we just forgot about them.
Has it worked for you?
For me, no, it hasn't.
For you, Mark, has 1D, 1F worked? Has it lived up to expectations?
No, not as expected. Because, I mean, the noise was there. We were expecting that it's going to change the structure of the economy. But as it is now, even the president admitted that we have to change the structure of the economy, which therefore means that we are not there yet. So we need to do more. And I think that as a chamber, we are working hand in hand with some of our members to help in changing the structure of the economy.
Thank you so much, Mark and Kukwa. For now, we're still debating the 2023 budget in anticipation of what we will be told, what will be coming our way from the budget. We take a breather. We'll be back with more.
Right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us here on the Joy News channel. We're also live on Joy 99.7 FM. It's the Joy Business pre-2023 budget discussion, Ghana's ailing economy, 2023 budget to the rescue. And this evening we're joined in studio by Dr. Humphrey Ayimdake, who is president of the Association of Ghana Industries. We have Joseph Obeng, who is president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association. We're joined on Zoom by Professor Peter Korte, who is director of the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research. Dr. Presla Chumesi was a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics of the University of Ghana, and Yao Latte is a partner of Deloitte Ghana, joining us to have this all-important conversation. So let me get back in studio. Let me start in studio with you, Humphrey. And Professor Peter Korte talks about, some innovations when it comes to revenue collection. Let me get your views on that.
Great. To tackle that question, I'll start from a comment by Bedu from the chamber.
Mark Bedu budget.
Mark, regarding budget. Budgets are basically projections into the future, underpinned by assumptions. The said assumptions could be tested in terms of credible assumptions on credible assumptions. And in that space of the assumption, there are externalities and internal factors that could play onto the assumption to disrupt a budget that was set up. 2022 budget, 2021 budget fall in the same set scope because of COVID, because of the Russian-related one, because of the Fed, shooting up their interest rate, the dynamics both internally and externally. So yes, the budget might not have achieved its target, but you see, you got to look beyond it and see what are the assumptions. How do we tackle these set assumptions to correct it and make sure the projections for 2023 will be credible? I bring this up because, just as mentioned by Professor Korte, the revenue targets might not have been met. We need to interrogate and disaggregate our revenue structure and say what are the causes for the revenues that we did not meet in 2022. And then you could see that, okay, let's trace it. There was a policy that probably came in, and that policy disrupted revenue inflows because productive sector went low. Maybe there might be VAT that came in, and the structure of the VAT rather became punitive. And a lot of people decided to dodge the punitive tax rather and decided to do their own thing. When you interrogate the causes, which are assumptions, it gives room for correction. Now, on innovations of revenue, mobilization, government over the 4 years period really trumpeted digitization as one of the routes of expanding the tax net. We need to find out from government, with all this investment in the digitization and all the innovations there, how do we leverage on it now? If that has become one route, we believe, if government deploys technology, which is an innovation format, you could double the VAT, because there's a lot of leakages in the VAT. even though the structure is not perfect, we have tabled in our budgetary submission that let that VAT be relooked at and then deploy technology. That is clear innovation. E-levy, we know, had its own difficulties. And for us, we believe, why don't you reduce the e-levy and possibly expand the scope that was, adjusted? That becomes another form of innovation that you could do. Another form of innovation, we believe, is the pre-taxation of industrial raw materials. It might call for an exemption, we call it a zero rate on the industrial raw materials. It will then give that base a bigger base, rejuvenate or revitalize the productive sector. And when you slap sales tax or VAT at the tail end, which is a post-production, taxation, the value is bigger. On the presumption that you would have deployed e-levy, e-VAT, and e-commerce form of taxation. Innovation and technology has become the only route to leapfrog, and it's the innovation of the century that we believe, with government's extent of digitization, they should explore that. So that is what we'll want to see in the budget, and that is what will help also in the property taxation and other related ones. These are the form of revenue measures that we seek, but we do not seem to see increase in taxation. That is not what we expect now. There's so much of government revenue being leaked out. How do you curtail that? Deploy innovation, and we pray that could solve a lot of the issues and bring in more revenue.
Great. You agree with him, Joseph Abing?
I can't agree with him more. Because we have to expand the tax net, and then we do not have to overstretch businesses. As we are facing now, businesses are collapsing. I'm telling you, if the policy of government trying to enhance on its revenue collection, and it is dwelling on just a few of us, importers and then the manufacturers, then of course they are going to break the back of the businesses that are actually working for this country. We have to expand the tax net. Like Dr. Chumasi said, that the road tax need to become. There are so many innovative. You
want the road tax? I mean, road tolls back?
Yes, definitely. That's a tax system that every Ghanaian do not support its this being removed from.
Really?
Yes,
you say every Ghanaian doesn't support the removal of road tolls.
People have the.
Dr. Bing, you did any research on that?
I know, well, for what I hear, and so many people are saying that we have to expand the tax net. It should not be said that taxes are being paid and recycled among just a few of us. And that's why I started this program with the overpricing of the benchmark values. It is neither here nor there. They are just taking the benchmark from us because they have increased over 60%.
My understanding of the situation doesn't support what you're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because the benchmark...
I am saying my understanding...
Benchmark system is illegality being perpetuated on us. Benchmark system doesn't exist anywhere. It does not... It does not exist in the WTO valuation system. It's illegality in its first, because what they have to use is the transactional values, and then they are now using their own discretions to bring out a set of values to benchmark our prices.
I mean, hold on. I don't want us to...
We are talking about...
Hold on. I'll continue. I don't want us to focus so much on this.
Exactly.
Because if we're to focus so much on this, we can go into the explanations and why they do these things. Because there are instances where people have actually, shown transactional values that have not been the case. That's something we know. But you celebrated when the reduction was done. You celebrated when the reductions were done.
It was illegality in the first place because, excuse me, if you do not understand, please, let everybody understand, because everybody is blaming the trading community for high price of goods and services. That's where my interest is. Where government is pushing so much cost on doing business.
You push that wrong
and that's
agenda.
why I concentrated only on that aspect. And that now, if prices of goods and services have gone up, is because government have taken off the benchmark.
Proponent of benchmark.
The benchmark is illegality.
Let me tell you. And now you enjoyed it today. It says illegality.
Please let me say.
Benchmark. You were proponent.
Benchmark value came, and it was not existence. And it came, when it came, and the values were high. From customs, of course. Yeah. And then they brought these values. And that's why we agitated that the values that we have brought is not the transactional values that we bring. And that government came out and reduced by 50%. Now they have increased over 60%. What have they done? They've taken it off the table.
So it is an illegality.
And so it gives you the opportunity as an industrialist to now be able to showcase your goods. And that's what I support.
Disrupted economic formula in this country because of that.
Because now importation has become so expensive, so unattractive, so discouraging. And then we are looking from within and even patronize what is supposed to be cheaper.
Okay, hold on. Now, allow Joseph Obing to make his point. Yes, go ahead.
And so, please, you have to allow me when you're talking.
Proceed.
Yeah, and there are so many things. You see, initially, what the economists have made us to believe that importation is destroying the economy, and that the depreciation of the cedi is even good for the economy. Have you heard that one before?
Continue.
And then they have said that the cedi is so strong and that the cedi should be allowed to fund its level. Have you also heard that? And now, who determines what limits and what determines what limits at the stage that we've reached? And this is what is eating us up. So most times the truth must be told.
So let me just clarify. The point has been made that the current depreciation we're facing would compel governments to begin to look within in enhancing production in their countries, value addition, which will go a long way into translating into import substitution.
Perfect.
And which is the way to go. And that's why for some economists, they say what countries are going through now is a blessing in disguise, which will compel governments to do the right thing.
Exactly. So that's why I even support government to segregate. Even now, we have not been made to know the goods that we have so much in abundance that we can even patronize, especially when importation have become because of the benefit of this depreciation. Importation have become so expensive.
Let's do a couple of battles.
Importation have become so expensive. Then local manufacturing goods should be the one that is saving us. And that's why I support government when they say that they are going to segregate. Let us know the goods that we have in abundant quantities and competitive, and then we depend on if even government will support it. But now, government should, in this budget, should be able to hit the ground running by producing these goods that have been selected. It shouldn't be a lip service.
Hold on.
After who destroying?
Hold on.
Don't forget that we are the distributing sector.
No, Joseph Obing.
We are vibrant.
Joseph Obing and Humphrey Ayimdake. Hold on a second.
May I just do a couple of corrections?
Yes. No, he's not insulting you.
There's a bit of confusion in the mind of my colleague here.
What confusion?
Well, I'll not use my time to do that. A couple of things I seek to add to it. That, you see, in the cost build-up of our production, in the 2022 budget, government indicated the intention to make sure the MDAs and agencies charge the right fees. However, there's one particular one that Obi and myself suffer. GAPOA. We do not understand why GAPOA charges its rates in dollars. It is against the BOG rules. And therefore, if you charge GAPOA through the Ministry of Transport, that agency must be brought to book. Their current fees are all in dollars. Why should it be the case?
And the shipping lines.
And the shipping lines. Yeah. They are part of the agencies complicating the effort of the president. I would love to deal with this one and shelve that one of being for now. There are other matters. The gaming industry over the years has not been taxed. Why can't we tax the gaming industry and rake in revenue for government? I will seriously seek to do interventions that will give us a positive route. In the previous budget of 22, government deliberately gave relief to the African textile print. We all know the subject matter of textiles and oils and beverages that are coming smuggled through the ports. When government puts tax stamp on the textile industry, go and see how the textile industries are performing. Once you can give them further support between GTP, which is Vlisco, and the Volta Star, all the way backward to backward integration, very soon cotton can be grown back in the north. Those are the sort of interventions we are looking for, not benchmark discount values that distorts the economic formula of the country. And today, you say it's an illegality.
Hold on. Let me go on to Zoom because we have Professor Peter Korte and Professor Peter Korte. So let's look at a few things. First of all, let's look at, you've talked about innovative measures. In here, the gentlemen in studio have talked about, the need. For instance, Joseph talks about the need to bring back road tolls. There's also been a conversation about expenditure cuts, something you've talked about. But here we have government talking about continuing with expenditure cut when it comes to salaries of appointees. I mean, Dr. Chumesi Bafo has made the point that, if you started that in 2022, the evidence on the ground doesn't suggest that it's really worked. So why should you continue something that doesn't look like working with expenditure? And two, would you support that we bring back road tolls? Do we need new taxes anyway, Professor Peter Korte?
I don't think we need new taxes. We can make the ones we already have in the system more efficient. So, for instance, road tolls, I strongly support the idea of bringing back road tolls. One of the arguments made is that for the whole year, we collect only 78 million or so dollars, cedis. And then there's a lot of congestion at the toll booths. But we have to invest. You cannot reap where you have not sown. We need to invest a bit into the toll booths. There is digitalization, e-tolls, where we widen the roads or we widen the boats, those who can pay. If you find the Legon as an example, for instance, where the roads are tolled, the gates are tolled, and it helps streamline the system. You don't find congestion around the toll booths. Similarly, we could do that. We've traveled across the world. We've seen how countries toll their roads. I don't see why we use this paper tolls and people queue for hours to pay a little toll. It is so inefficient. I think given that we have touted digitalization, and it's a good way to go. Government has invested so much in that area, which I'm very happy and proud of. But I think we have not tapped adequately into that area. Let us introduce road tolls. Let's have the e-pass system, decongest the toll system, and ensure that the revenue actually comes to government. More than 50% of what is collected at those toll booths don't end up in government coffers. A lot of them end up in private pockets. Let's not run away from that fact. So reintroduce road tolls and make some money, as well as other tax handles. E-levy can be made better, can be made more efficient. Let's reduce the rate to 0.5, and I am sure we can raise a lot of revenue. It's quite shocking that we have a product that has substitutes. E-levy, you can liken it to, let's say, Fanta or Coke. I can decide to buy Mirinda or any other soft drink. So why do you price it so high when there are substitutes? When I can walk to the bank and withdraw money, where I can use a checkbook, where I can use other means, I can pay cash. So I think the whole design of the e-levy is a good concept of raising money, given the times we find ourselves. But I think it's ill-advised. The rate is too punitive that we will not rake in the needed revenue. Let me make this point. I've heard the two gentlemen argue about who is right and importation and all that. I think we need to grow our industrial base. Yes, for those goods that we are not able to produce, we can import. But let's rationalize the importation. We seem to be importing too many things. Everybody is an importer. We are importing anything into the country. So we don't think many people who have capital, who can think, who can industrialize, can engage in industry, are not thinking about engaging in industry. They are thinking about what to import. Once we import and continue to import, we put pressure on our exchange rate. We are also creating jobs in other countries. Why are we doing this to our economy? We need to streamline the systems. The economy has to be revitalized. We ought to look at some of these structures of our economy, which is weak. One district, one factory for me is something I strongly supported. I was quite happy about that. But I don't think we have gained what we wanted to achieve from 1D, 1F. There are quite a few of them that are doing so well. potato, turn potato into bread, and many other fine products that we have all seen in the market. You see Ghanaians producing chocolates and all that. I think we are doing well in that respect, but I believe there's a lot of room for improvement in that respect.
Thank you very much, Professor Peter Korte. Let me get to Dr. Chumesi Bafo and get your thoughts on a thing or two. So there's a suggestion really that, yes, we've talked about, how we have to, how the program with the IMF should influence our 2023 budget. There are those who argue that maybe we should have presented a budget and used the budget to actually hold discussions with the IMF on a program. What's your take on that?
Thank you, Winston. I believe that looking at the macro indicators, certainly there was no option in terms of wait. The government could not have waited any longer. Why? Because you can tell based on prior to the announcement, you see the level of depreciation of the currency and the speculation that was happening, all because people were looking at the numbers, i.e. the inflation rates, government projections as to government not being able to meet its debt obligations and all that. And so I don't think that in terms of the timing of asking for support from the IMF was too early. We shouldn't have waited. It actually should have come in quite earlier than now. Probably if we had done that, maybe looking at where the city is at this point, we probably would not have gotten to this level.
And now that you've raised the question about the city, it's one of the major things we should be, looking forward to when it comes to the 2023 budget. What would you want to see in the budget that can help deal with the depreciation of the city?
I believe that as we make projections, i.e. we are talking about revenue and expenditure measures. So on the expenditure measures, we want to see, like we've indicated, solid actions by government, pointing out that, yes, this is a government that means business in terms of cutting down the expenditure. Revenue handles will see that we want to see some innovation in there that is raking in the needed revenue. And when that is done, it will build back confidence in the economy. And basically at this point, why is a country approaching the IMF? We need balance of payment support because of the imbalance in there. That is what is creating the issues with the depreciation of the currency. So when the fund comes in, first of all, we will gain the needed confidence. The market will get confidence back in the sense that we will be on track. And when you look at the pattern of Ghana, whenever it has gone under an IMF program, you see that, we are stellar performers, that no doubt about it. So in that sense, we will gain market access, i.e. Be able to still go on the foreign market to borrow the needed resources. The IMF is coming in with 3 billion. If we get access to that funds, it is also going to a large extent. So the stabilization, we can see that it will happen. When we get onto the program, the stabilization would happen in the sense that the needed forex would come in. And whilst the forex comes in, we also need to keep our eyes on the demand for the forex. So like I agree, and I sort of enjoy the conversation between AGI and GUTA in the sense that, yes, as economists, we believe that promoting and supporting AGI is the way to go. But that notwithstanding, we also know that we don't live in an isolated world. And for that matter, the Ghanaian public should be able to have access to goods and services that are not produced domestically. But when it comes to which ones are necessary, we need to prioritize. And like Prof. Korte indicated, we don't have to bring in everything, import everything. The benchmark values, for example, when you go into some of the figures, the list of the items that are there, you wonder whether we are very serious about our industrialization drive. Because you see items like oil, you see items like chocolate, a whole lot of things. if those values are being reviewed downwards for items that we do not have the comparative advantage of producing, like car parts, what do we call, a lot of things that we cannot produce in Ghana, fair enough. But if we are giving discount on import levy on things like chocolate and oil and other things where we can produce competitively, then it's sort of we are shooting ourselves in the foot.
Great. Let me get to Yaolate before we go to Benjamin in Studio 997. So Yaolate, you're making a point earlier. You're telling us what your expectations are. If we could just pick up from there, and then I'll come in with a question or two.
Okay, thank you, Winston. I'm not audible.
Yeah, I think you're better now. Yes, you can go on.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of expectation, like I mentioned, there are 4 areas of concern. And the first one I mentioned before is our low revenue base. We should look at alternative ways of getting our revenue or supporting our revenue. We tried illegality. It may not have performed as expected. What other forms of revenue can we look out for? I mentioned that we have used the tax or our Ghana card as our tax identification number. We need to optimize the returns on our Ghana card. A lot of people have registered the Ghana card, but how do you follow up with them to pay taxes on their properties, to pay taxes on the money they earn from other sources, not the formal sources? The second one is our public debt. We know our public debt has been a key cause for concern. What we need to do, beyond all the issues that we are talking about, IMF program, is a way to also look at the benefit that we can get from our concessionary loan facilities. We still have concessionary loan facilities in our portfolio, and therefore there's an opportunity to engage concessionary partners and engage our multilateral partners and ask for some soft terms on our concessionary loan facilities in our portfolio of debt. Our commercial facilities are there. It may be difficult to restructure, especially external debt, but the concessionary component of it, we can negotiate with our multilateral partners and get some concessions out of that. And then the third one I'll look at is the global development that has affected the 3 Fs. What we call the 3 Fs are fuel, food, and financial conditions. As we speak, fuel prices keep increasing almost every week, and it's getting to almost a daily basis. What are we doing? There are 2 ways to look at it. We address the depreciation of the local currency and also address the taxes of fuel. If we find a way to look at one of them, that would be beneficial to us. That either we take out some of the taxes of fuel, or in the short term, have some measures to address or support the importers of fuel, so that the price of fuel do not go up symmetrically as global prices are also going up. The third F, or the second F, is food. We are in a bumper harvest season now. We are supposed to be in a bumper harvest season, but there are some food items that are very expensive. If you look at the inflation report that was published, food inflation is also a key component. So what are we doing with our planting for food and jobs and other programs that are supposed to support fertilizer and seedlings for farmers? We need to support that so that the cost of food is reduced. If other factors such as fuel is beyond us, food is within our control, and we should be able to control the price of fuel. And the last one is financial conditions. We should give access to businesses. And we have all the gentlemen in the studio who are concerned about their businesses. If cost of borrowing is increasing, business will suffer. And so we should address the financial conditions as indicated or discussed before. And the last one is look at how other economic indicators as was revised in the new revised inflation to 28.5% as our annual inflation to the end of the year. As we speak, inflation last month was about 37.2%. Are we going to hit the 40s or the 50s? We should find a way to help minimize the effect of inflation and increasing cost of goods and services on the average Ghanaian. Cost of living has become very difficult for the average Ghanaian, and some programs or some initiatives should be introduced so that the impact is not felt. We protect the people who are so vulnerable in society. There are others who can survive. There are others that if you go through the living conditions as we are seeing now, cost of transport is increasing, fuel prices are increasing, and other economic indicators are also increasing. Okay. It will be very difficult for some people who are vulnerable in society survive. And the last is our engagement with the IMF. We expect it to be smooth and also a fast-track process. The earlier we reach, let's say, an IMF staff level agreement, the better for us. It sends the right signal out there. Mind you, some of the reasons why we have been downgraded consistently in the last few months is because of the loss of investor confidence in the economy. And once you get downgraded in the way that we have been downgraded, investor confidence will be lost. We can restore investor confidence when we quickly or we fast track our engagement with the IMF. And reaching some form of agreement with the IMF helps you in the other way, as when we are discussing about the debt restructuring. Okay. I'll give you an example of Zambia. Zambia has gone through the same program. They went through for 2 years. But what they did is to restructure their debts. They did not just do it, the restructuring. They had a form of support or guarantee or a special drawing right from the IMF. With that special drawing right, they went out to their creditors and engaged. Because we are talking about no haircuts. The way that's done is or support from the Electoral Fund. Okay.
Yalati, can you hold on for me? I need to go to Benjamin Akakpo, who is in Studio 997. He'll be engaging Kuku Adams and Mark Biduabwaje. So let's cross over to Benjamin now, who is in Studio 997, to continue with the conversation.
Back into the studio, of course. Mark and Kuku are still here. Yeah. Quick question. That was quite a conversation on the e-levy earlier. Yeah. What is your take on it? Has it lived up to expectation? And ahead of the budget reading, should it stay? Should it go? What are your expectations? I'll start with you, Mark.
Well, not at all. I mean, if you look at the numbers, we are way below what the revenue we're expecting to get from that. And right from day one, and let me say that as businesses, we are not against payment of taxes. What we are against is taxes that are inimical and nuisance to businesses, because if you are not careful, they'll end up eroding all your revenue.
Is the e-levy a nuisance tax?
Yes, we made it clear. At the current rate, we made it clear that we would have loved to, but the rate is on a higher side.
Well, what would be a good rate for you?
For me, anything below 1% will be fine. And businesses, those SMEs and those informal sector businesses, they are rational people. You may think that they don't have knowledge on taxes, and as such, you can just impose a tax and they will always find a way around this. And that is what we are experiencing. So we will appeal to the Minister of Finance that there is another opportunity for us to look at the e-levy. They should go back and reduce it. I think that we are all feeling the heat of what is going on, and we are all ready to contribute to increase the revenue for the government. But if you put it at a level where we cannot afford, definitely people will avoid it. So they have to take a second look at the e-levy, and I think it will help us generate the revenue that we need as a country.
Kuku, some have called for it to be scrapped. What's your take?
Well, I like what Mark said, where he said SMEs will all find ways to go around it. Yeah. I think for me, let me just take us back when e-levy was introduced. Were of the impression that funds from the e-levy was going to help entrepreneurship. It was going to go into youth employment. And just this morning, I think I saw that some of the participants of the NAPCO program are even striking. And so it just takes us back. And to answer your question, I don't think that it has done, it has served its purpose in terms of what we're expecting it to do for, the economy in total.
What practically do you feel government can do in this budget to aid small business, looking at the impact you've faced? Let's take your group, for example. Right. What do you feel has been the real impact, if you had to measure it, on your business in this year, and how can it be mitigated? So,
running a sustainable business, these times have really tested all of us. And in the 2022 budget, we also noted that there was going to be an initiative, Youth Start, where it was going to, eventually create 1 million jobs in about 3 years, offer capacity building programs, mentorship, and make access to funding very easy. As it stands now, we haven't really heard much. So we can confidently say that it hasn't really started. And, businesses like, us, also do well to contribute to the economy, because we're right with these structures, with these policies, with these push, obviously we're able to contribute to the economy through our export duties.
Right.
We're able to create newer markets, and we're also going to help reduce the unemployment rate. And this is where we are now, where we're unable to do all of these things. So it's been a real struggle.
Talking about where we find ourselves, so you're looking at the double whammy of inflation and the city exchange rate as businesses, and the convoluted mix of everything else that we have to deal with, fuel prices and everything else. But then you look at, like Kukwa is saying, Mark, what can be done to cushion the ordinary Ghanaian in the budget? Togo's example, I beg your pardon, Togo's example is apt. They are subsidizing on fuel, on inflation, of course, because that will also have a ripple effect, with $20 million per month. And the interesting thing is, I went there just about 2 weeks ago, and the fuel prices definitely are below 10 Ghana cedis when you do the equivalents. Of course, now their CFA is having, quite a bit of power against our cedi. What can be done in that respect to cushion the ordinary Ghanaian?
Okay, so if you take the fuel prices, for instance, I think there are a number of taxes in there that you have said time and time again that under these difficult circumstances, you should take a second look at these taxes.
The tax component per litre is about 2.7 cedis.
Yes. So if, for instance, the cedi is depreciating and it's affecting the prices, that one you may not have immediate control. But government using the fiscal policy now have control over the taxes and can at least be able to remove some of the taxes to cushion businesses and the ordinary citizens. The other thing that other countries are doing, especially Cote d'Ivoire, is to reduce import duties on goods that we usually, like flour, like wheat and rice and other things. Go to the port now and try importing something. You pay about 17 taxes, including COVID-19 recovery levy.
Right.
2 years after we have actually gone out of COVID-19.
Yeah.
So all these taxes are adding up to the cost and worsening the plight of the ordinary people. So I think with the side of monetary policy, we've seen some actions being taken, but the silence of the fiscal policy is what, for me, is very worrying. But you need the two to work together before you'll be able to achieve this. So the government should listen to the call of businesses, the core of the ordinary people. Now, if you increase fuel prices, definitely the drivers will increase it, because you are going to buy diesel at 24 cedis. You don't expect that the driver would take a fare below that of the fuel. So, and all this feeds into inflation and also worsen the depreciation that we are experiencing. I think we need to start from somewhere. We know the sources of the inflation. Let's begin to tackle it from there, and I think we'll get the results. They should listen to us and do something about these key things that you mentioned, the depreciation and that of the fuel prices and other things.
I'll put this question to both of you. I'll start with you, Mark. It has to do with a haircut, whether we're going to get it or not. We heard from the president that there wouldn't be a haircut. Kojo Ponkroma explained to us what that really meant. But when you look at our current CC rating and looking at the fact that we've been told once we have any form of debt restructuring, we're going to enter RD, which is like a restrictive default situation. Already at CC, it means that we have more than a 50% likelihood of defaulting on our debt. That would make matters even worse. Some say that if we get to that point, even the IMF deal would not do much for us. What are your expectations if we should have a debt restructuring?
Well, I know there will be some form of a haircut, but as to whether it's going to be a punk or a sakura is what I'm not too sure of. Because if you look at our level of debt to GDP, and the IMF is more concerned about debt sustainability, for us to get to a level where we'll be able to easily access this funding, then there should be some form of restructure. I don't know how it's going to be. I would have loved to take the president by the word and say that there will not be haircut. Of course, those who have monies with the banks and other treasury bill will now feel the relief that they are not going to lose either their principal or the interest. That would have been the best thing. But as to how they are going to do it, I don't know. One form is to also extend the duration of the facility. in that sense, you're also having a form of a haircut, because if you discount the value of what you are going to lose using the current interest rate or even the inflation rate, definitely the real value of your investment will go down. So there's going to be a form of a haircut, but I'm not too sure how it's going to be. But I would have loved that once the president said there will not be any haircut, we are waiting to see so that we can hold him to what he's saying, and we are praying for that.
All right. I'm looking at your outlook, and I know definitely you're going to say no.
Oh no, I mean just to add to what Mark was saying, I mean there are debt restructuring options, and of course, as he mentioned, then we can also look at asking for a long tenor, and I know that there's also reprofiling that can also be done. So I mean we're all hoping that the president sticks to his word. Otherwise, it means that we also have to try to exhaust all the other options, just so that we can arrive at the no haircut option.
As I take your final words, I would like you to look at taxation. I don't know what your take is. What are you looking forward to? No taxes, especially as we have the e-levy, e-VAT and all of that, and like you've mentioned, COVID-19 levy and all of that. What are your expectations ahead of the budget in that respect? And generally, what are you looking forward to as small business and as corporate entities as well?
So, well, we're hoping that there are no more taxes, because what we're currently, absorbing as small businesses is crippling us gradually. However, I think that what I would want, or what my expectations will be, is should there be, even an additional tax, for example, then we're also looking out for enhanced compliance systems. We're hoping that whoever the tax man is, there's been the proper screening and evaluating of who this tax person is. There's a lot of communication and education as well, because we're also struggling with finding, the right information. We're not sure how, all these things come up, but if there's proper education and there's consistency in that, it will help us as well.
All right, before I go to Mark, so quickly, as small business, what are your expectations in the budget? What are you hoping you could get to cushion you?
Well, first of all, of course, we are hoping that the initiative for You Start, we see it through. Secondly, we're also looking for, hopefully, the no taxes. And then we're also looking for some clarity, because some of the things that we hear all the time, sometimes they come out as very vague. So a bit more clarity with the hope that there are no taxes. And of course, the You Start program, seeing it through.
Right. Thank you very much, Kukwa. Mark?
Well, let me say that the chamber is not for bigger companies. The chamber is also, we have about 90% of our members are SMEs. So let me correct that. I think we have a lot of taxes already, both direct and indirect taxes, a lot of them. So my plea is that they should not introduce any new taxes. What they have to do is to be efficient in the collection of the existing taxes. There are a lot of leakages. They need to plug them. And I think that will be fine. We have also proposed that it will not be fair for you to tax a bigger company 25% corporate tax, and also an SME at 25%. So we have proposed a tier tax system.
So pegging you at the same level.
Yes, a tier tax system. This is the time that we need to give some relief to the businesses to grow. If you are taxing them 25%, of course you are telling them that you don't want to plow back because the taxes will eat all your revenue. And a research we did actually clearly indicate that all SMEs in Ghana are growth driven. It means that given the opportunity, they can grow. What is really impacting negatively on them is taxes and high interest rate and other things, which for me, we need to take a second look at it, and we'll be able to grow our taxes. In the 2023 budget, I'm looking out for a budget that will inspire businesses, a budget that will bring the confidence back into the economy. At the moment, is very low confidence because we have all the macroeconomic variables deteriorating from the beginning of the year up to this time. And I would also want to see a clear policy direction on how they are going to decrease inflation and solve the issue of depreciation. Clear numbers and not general statements. In the president's speech, I noticed that there were a lot of general statements that I said that they should put numbers to them in the budget. If you want to reduce the list of imports that the president mentioned, rice, sugar, and all those things, I want to see numbers. I want to reduce them from 100 to 50. So we can hold you accountable. Key performance indicators. You go back and say that you say you reduce it to 50%. What is the level now? And
so
then
let's put hard numbers to all of these proposals that are being put there. Of course, I've had in the studio CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Bedu Abuaje. Thank you so much, Mark, for having joined the conversation. A lot of insight you've shared. Also in the studio, Kukwa Adams, CEO of Clay Group. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. Back to you in Studio 70, Winston.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. So let's get straight on to Zoom and pick the final thoughts of Professor Peter Korte, Dr. Chumesi Bafo, and Yaolate. In a minute, all of you have a minute each. Starting off with you, Professor Peter Korte, your final thoughts.
We are not in this alone. Globally, every country is witnessing this high inflation, high food prices, fuel prices, and many others. But the policy, your ability to pushing yourself, your ability to absorb the shock, your domestic policies is what matters. And therefore expect in our 2023 budget, clear-cut policies to enhance revenue mobilization, as well as things to cut down government spending. I would like to see practical measures and the results as well, the 30% cut in emoluments. We want to see clear-cut results, as well as means by which we are going to stabilize the exchange rate. And more importantly, the debt restructuring. Okay. How are we engaging the IMF? The specific details. I think that is very critical.
Thank you very much, Professor Peter Korte. Dr. Chumesi Bafo, you have a minute.
Thank you, Winston. So for me, in the 2023 budget, we see that persistently government has been running high budget deficits. I want to see the plan government has in getting back on track to the fiscal responsibility levels. As of now, I think we are doing around 9%. It is still quite high. And that means that how we get back on track is to increase the revenue mobilization and reduce the expenditure bits. A key area, as I know, is the exemptions bill, which is also a way that the country is losing a lot of revenue in terms of the exemptions and the items that are on it. And so I know the bill is in Parliament, it's at a key stage. We want to see the implementation. What is it? And it should be clear in the agenda in terms of industrialization. If we are serious about industrialization, our benchmark figures, our exemption bills should all be targeting local industries, helping them to be competitive. And at the end of the day, produce, grow, generate jobs, and also export to generate the needed export revenue.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chumesi Bafo. Yaolate, you have a minute.
Yeah, so I think my final comment is beyond the taxes, we should look at alternative revenue sources. If you look at government estimates, about 77% of the total expected revenue supposed to come from taxes. And for the environment that we find ourselves in, if we focus on taxing the faithful few, it will be a disincentive. It will be counterproductive. So I'm looking at other alternative sources of revenue. The e-levy hasn't performed well. Beyond e-levy, what else can we look at to bring others into the tax bracket? And I think that we should have business-friendly taxes as opposed to taxes that really adversely affect businesses. And okay. I will encourage governments to look for other forms of revenue beyond taxes. Thank you very much.
Yaolate, who is partner at Deloitte Ghana. You heard from Dr. Chumesi Bafo, who is a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics of the University of Ghana, and Professor Peter Korte, who is Director, Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research. In studio is Joseph Obing, who is President of GUTA. Finally, Joseph Obing.
Yeah, it's so simple. We do excessive importation. We admit, but we have to use the investment laws to control it, because it's over dominance of these foreigners in this retail sector. The locals, our bit is about 15%. So let's use the investment laws, and we are there. We can support our local industries. Let's also try to stabilize the currency. let's reduce the benchmark values, and then let's make VAT affordable and prices will be cheaper.
Okay.
It is not our fault that prices are high. We are not the cause of price hike. And above all, with all these things that we are talking about, let's ensure value for money expenditure, that we do not overspend our expenditure. It will bring us back to nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Humphrey.
All right, great. So I will pick it up, and I wish I had Professor Quarte's opinion on this. That the IMF intervention will bring about balance of payment support. However, we have structural defects in our economic model or paradigm, and we might need some form of concessionary funding and not necessarily commercial loans to go about this structural transformation. So in our proposal from the AGI perspective, we've engaged, and I recall we engaged Imani and GIZ and said that beyond the balance of payment support from IMF, what is the route through the World Bank or bilateral donors to get some form of soft fund? In the past, it was what we call the structural transformation agenda. What do we do to get some form of funding to intervene in those structural issues that every now and then the Ghana Ghana Statistical, statistician reports on? Yeah. We have what we call the Obatampa project, a brilliant document, but it needs structural transformation intervention, cheap source of funding, not commercial funding, to do this turnaround. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
I'm king of import, my brother.
Thank you very much, Dr. Humphrey Yimdaka. Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph Obeng. Just by way of information, so the exemptions bill is passed now into an act. The conversation will continue tomorrow on the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. We'll continue with that, this all-important conversation. Thank you so much for joining the Joy Business pre-2023 budget conversation. My name is Winston Amoah. I did this with Benjamin Akakbo. Do have a lovely evening. Coming up is PM Express. Enjoy your evening.